Thanks for watching Soundwell Guitar. We're going to be doing some more of the note reading series we've been on now for the past few weeks. We're actually going to learn to read some more of the lower notes, but this time we're going to be fretting them. Okay, so we're learning to read the lower bass notes. On the last lesson we talked about how the range of the guitar is so low that we have to actually add lower lines called ledger lines to bring it into that low register, because the stav's 5 lines and 4 spaces just isn't a broad enough range. Anyway, we're going to start first by learning the note F and the note G, and these are on the big string here. Now we learned last week's lesson the open 6th string is the E. Now all we have to do is put our first finger on the first fret of that string, raises it to an F. So we have our new note there. It's very recognizable because you can see it's written right on the bottom 3rd ledger line. So it's really low, but not quite as low as the E was when it was just below it. But you can always recognize it as that. It's on the 3rd ledger line, right on it. You see the line going right through it. Okay, and there it is with our first finger. Our next one that we're going to do is G. And G, as you can see, it's moved up, and it's just underneath the 2nd ledger line. It's underneath it, and we fret that one with our 3rd finger, and it's on the big string again, the 6th string, and we're going to put our 3rd finger on that string, and there's our note G. Okay, so then our first exercise that we're going to do on the big string involves just doing these 3 notes, E, F, and G. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, it may not be necessary for me to mention this, but I'm going to anyway. As we've been doing on all these finger picking lessons so far, we've been using the apoyando technique, and that is how I just performed that, was using the apoyando stroke. The thumb just drops into the next string. I also want to point out too that my index, middle, and even annular finger are just resting on the 1st string while I'm just using the thumb exclusively. I've seen a lot of times with students, sometimes when they're just focused on the thumb, they forget the posture of their right hand. They don't have the arc in the wrist anymore, like we talked about. And what winds up happening is they go from a position like this, their hands nice and angled correctly. They wind up bringing their hand down like this because they're just focusing on their thumb. And then they don't even notice that this is a problem because they're just playing with their thumb. But it could become a problem later when we start combining the thumb and the index and middle. Because when we'd wind up having to start moving our hand around in funny ways every time we're trying to get back and forth from one note to the next, that is the higher notes than the lower notes. And if we had to keep moving our arm, like, that's not very practical. Well, a lot of times what I tell my students to do if they find themselves having this difficulty is to just go back to playing the index middle thing, you know, the apoyando patterns we were doing a few lessons back on the 1st string. Go back into putting the arc in the wrist and then pluck a few of those. See, I've got the arc in the wrist here now. And then I just pluck the string from that same posture. I didn't adjust the position of my hand at all when I did that. I didn't bring it down like that. I just kept it up like this. So there's the posture for index middle. Same posture for the thumb. So now let's move on to the notes on our 5th string. If you remember in the last lesson, the 5th string open is an A, and that's just sitting on the 2nd ledger line below the staff. So we're going to raise that pitch now to the pitch of B, and that is located directly under the first ledger line. So the second ledger line is now gone because we're not using it. We're above it. We don't even write it in the music, but we have it right underneath that first ledger line, and it looks like that. That's B. That's your second finger. You want to take your second finger and put it on the 5th string, 2nd fret, and then we've got our B. Our next note is C, and that is sitting right on that bottom ledger line. So we added only one ledger line underneath the staff to create this note called C, and we play that on the 5th string as well with the 3rd finger, 3rd fret. Now here's our next exercise that's going to involve just playing on the 5th string. We want to keep these really simple. They're just quarter notes for the most part, and 4/4 timing. We're playing them really slow and doing a lot of them in order, not real fancy melodies or rhythms yet. I want you to really know these notes before you try to get on to anything too advanced. You'll only get frustrated if you try to jump ahead too quickly. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Our next notes are going to be played on the 4th string. If you remember that the 4th string played open, that's D, and no ledger line was required for that. We're moving our way back up into the staff. We're going to fret the next note with our 2nd finger on that same string, the 4th string, 2nd fret, and this makes the note E. And there it is, right at the very bottom of our staff, E. The next note that we're going to do, same string, 4th string, we're moving to the 3rd fret with our 3rd finger, and the name of this note is F. And that's in the bottom space there in the staff, F. All right, so then our exercise for D, E, and F goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Our next exercise is actually a song. It's the melody for an old classic song called Joshua Fought the Battle of Jericho. I'd love to be putting tunes in our lessons like Purple Rain, Smells Like Teen Spirit, that kind of thing. There's a lot of times there's a little bit of a problem on YouTube and that with copyright infringement. So for now I'm playing it safe, and I'm just giving you these old songs that nobody owns the copyrights to anymore. So I think it's still kind of a cool melody. It's just a chance to practice learning your new bass notes and actually doing them to a melody that you may or may not recognize. Anyway, here we go. Joshua Fought the Battle of Jericho using our new bass notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Our last study in today's lesson is the longest piece of music that we've had to read in this series. I based this arrangement off of a classic tune, classical guitar, in fact, from the turn of the century Spanish classical composer named Isaac Albéniz. He had a famous tune called Asturias, which was part of a whole collection of tunes that each were named after a city in Spain. Anyway, the main theme is one of the most popular themes on guitar. It sounds something like this. We're not going to play it that fast, and we're not going to play it up here because we haven't quite gotten to that point where we're reading notes way up here. But you might recognize that. It's a pretty cool tune. But I've changed it to where we can actually play this tune reading the notes that we've just learned and the ones from the previous lesson. The entire thing will be plucked with the thumb, or pulgar. It's in the 3/4 time signature, so that's a little bit different than the exercises we were just doing. I'm going to specify in the music the numbers for the left-hand fingerings. I'm being really specific about what ones you should use because I truly believe that this combination of fingers that I've written in the music is going to be the most efficient. So I'm just going to start playing, and I'm going to start with the beginning, and it's just the main melody for the Asturias Leyenda theme, and it goes like this. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now it repeats that quite a bit. So it may be a long tune, but it repeats the same idea so many times, then you get this nice repetition going on, and it becomes a very effective exercise because it's intrinsically an exercise in that it's so repetitious. So it's going to do the over and over quite a few times. Now, you probably noticed I just played it a little bit faster, and it does sound a lot more exciting when you play it at that speed. But I would hold off on playing speeds like that for now. Let's just work on reading it. And when we read, we really need to keep it slow. I especially have had to when learning to read music because I've got very poor eyesight, and I just can't expect my eyes to keep up with how fast my hands typically want to move. So my hands have to conform to the ability of my eyes when I'm reading. Once I've really got something down and I don't have to read it anymore, then I can start playing fast. But as they say, the hand is quicker than the eye, so keep that in mind. As much as you'll want to play this fast, don't play it fast until you get it down. So here's a close-up of the left hand doing that main motif. That's the part of the tune that just keeps on repeating, so I thought you should see that close up. But more importantly, what I want you to see close up is these weird fingerings that I mentioned. That's why I penciled in some numbers representing the left-hand fingerings. We've covered that on previous lessons. We do something a little bit different in the middle of the tune when it changes, and you'll see that there's a 1 now on the B, like that. And earlier in this lesson I mentioned B's played with the second finger, but we're going to change that rule while doing this part because we're going to need the 2 here, and then we're going to use the 1 on this when we do this. So now I could do it like this. That worked fine. But once you start getting fast with it, it's not real efficient, can be kind of choppy. The 1 moves in there really, really easily. See how much more efficient that is? So yeah, in a few of these spots you'll see in our tune, we're going to be using the first finger to play B. So watch for that 1 when you see that later on in the tune. It's just much more efficient that way. So here I go. I'm going to play the whole thing from beginning to end now, and I want you to take notice of the spots where the left-hand fingerings might seem just a little bit weird. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. we've been spending a lot of time focusing on this note reading, but at this point now we've actually been able to cover a lot of the notes on all 6 of the strings. We're actually able to read the full natural scale, covering a wide range in the guitar, and this we're all able to actually read off of paper, which is, I think, a great accomplishment for any musician. Sometimes even more so for guitarists. A lot of guitarists never bother to learn to read music, and there's some great ones out there that have gotten away with not acquiring that skill. But I think that there's many that wind up regretting it later or wish that they had taken the time to do it. I think others might even find they run into some limitations by not knowing how to read music. Other things too, like we'll consider the style of music that we've been doing is really technically classical guitar. But anybody that's wanting to really get serious about playing classical guitar should learn to read. But I think that any guitarist, whatever genre, whatever level you're trying to play, should be able to read at least this basic level. But anyway, back to what we now know. This is the exciting part. We have the E, the F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G again. So we covered a wide range there, and we can read all of those notes now. And this is exciting because now we can start getting into more advanced and more musically rewarding music and be able to read it and interpret it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. There's more to come. We're going to get into some more advanced counting next, so stick around. And oh, by the way, I don't ever say this, but I'm kind of thinking maybe I need to start reminding people, if you're enjoying this video, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you. We'll see you next time.